6 years ago, I had the chance to drive this car for the very first time, a 2011 BMW 1 Series M. I loved it, and for years afterwards, I told people that it was my all-time favorite car to drive. Since then, many new cars have come out, and I've driven a lot of them, but the BMW 1 Series M remains one of my all-time favorites. It also remains the very best BMW ever made, and today, I'm going to tell you why. I borrowed this car from Glenn at the YouTube channel Glenn's Car Collection here in New Jersey, who offered me the opportunity to drive an entire garage full of his cool cars. But I chose the 1M because I love it so much and because it's such a unique BMW. It's one of the few modern BMWs where less is more. Allow me to explain. The M3 and the M5 and other BMWs are getting bigger and more powerful, and they have more stuff, but enthusiasts keep saying that they want stripped down cars that are all about performance, but BMW won't make them. I drove an M4 GTS the other day and I really enjoyed it, but it's just so much stuff. The gold wheels, the big wing, the roll cage, the dual clutch transmission, the water in the trunk. If you really want a stripped down high performance car, your only option really is to go back and get a vintage car like the original BMW M3. Or you could get this.
The 1 Series M was sold only for the 2011 model year, only as a coupe, only in 3 colors, and BMW sold only 740 in the entire US market. To put that in context, Toyota sells that many Camrys every day. The 1M also offered only one powertrain, a 335 horsepower turbocharged 6-cylinder mated to a 6-speed manual.
That's right, only 335 horsepower and a regular 6-speed manual instead of a fancy, fast, dual-clutch automatic. At a time of V8-powered BMW M3s and an obsession with 0 to 60 times and Nürburgring lap times, the 1 Series M wasn't really all that fast. And it wasn't really all that high-tech either.
For example, open up the door, climb inside, and you'll discover that there's no fancy modern electronic parking brake. There's just a parking brake. The cup holder doesn't have some awesome way of opening up to look cool. It's just a cup holder. The gauge cluster isn't some trick LCD screen like most modern high-tech cars. It's just a gauge cluster. The seat rails are openly visible, not hidden by some fancy piece of trim that costs $47 extra per vehicle. You know what you don't see up there? A sunroof. Sorry, not available on the 1M for the sake of simplicity, saving weight, and lowering the center of gravity. The center console isn't finished in a heavy, expensive leather, but plastic. How could they? The spoiler is just a little strip tacked on the back, not some over-the-top look-at-me affair. And while there is a center screen above the climate vents, the rest of the center controls are so simple and so easy. Compare that to this, or this, or this. All brand new cars, and you'll see why the 1M is such a breath of fresh air for people who simply want to drive. The coolest parts of the 1M's interior aren't high-tech gadgets that add weight and complexity. They're the BMW M color stitching on the steering wheel and the orange stitching everywhere else, like the dashboard, the seat bolsters, and even on the rear carpeting. And of course, that sweet stick shift right in the middle, by the cup holder.
So the 1M doesn't have all sorts of fancy tech, and it doesn't have huge power or any crazy modern features, and as a result, BMW figured that nobody would really buy it back in 2011. But the market went crazy. Although it's common now for certain low-volume production cars, like the 911 GT3 or the Mustang GT350, to sell above the sticker price, nothing did that back in 2011. But at the time, it was common to see these with a $20,000 markup over sticker. Even now, 6 years later, the average asking price for a 1M on AutoTrader is $57,000. The original base MSRP back in 2011, $47,000. Now, part of the reason the 1M took off immediately is because it didn't have all those modern gadgets that some drivers didn't want, but most of the reason is because of how it drives. To show you what I mean, I'm going to get behind the wheel and take this thing out on the road. And of course, for more of my thoughts on the 1M's driving experience, click the link below to check out my column on autotrader.com/oversteer. All right, 1M time. I'm so excited. Clutch is so good.
Yeah.
So good. Oh, it's like not too heavy. It's just so wonderfully weighted, and it's not jumpy as much. Oh, the clutch is just so, it's like buttery. I just keep wanting to push it. And the shifter, I mean, oh, it just goes right into gear perfectly. There's no play when you're in gear. Yeah, it's surprisingly quick. You know, people kind of knocked this car because at the time the M3 had a V8. People were like, oh, the 1M with that old 6-cylinder from the Z4 or whatever. Like, this thing, it actually moves pretty well. The thing I didn't like about that M3 was all the power was the absolute top. Yep. Whereas in this car, the turbocharger thing works in a way that you don't feel any turbo lag, and it kind of kicks in pretty quick. You can it's a little bit jumpier. It's like it feels peppier almost at low revs, which is where you are most of the time anyway. Man, yeah, the gear lever situation is just wonderful. One of the things I've always loved most about this car, and I still remember from when I first drove it, is just how smooth the clutches and how smooth the gear changes are. So every car company, before they make a stick shift car, should drive a 1M and say, this is what we're striving to. I just think it is perfect. And I don't always think that about BMWs. I sometimes think the BMW clutches can have a little bit of like a weird motion to them. The shifters can sometimes feel rubbery, like you mentioned. Yep. This one isn't like that at all. It's like they were like, no, this car we're going to really do right.
Right, this is a driver's car. Like, I've owned a lot of M cars. I have an M2, an S54 M Coupe, 2 M3s before that. And this car was made for a driver, right? So this is not a poser's car.
Right.
If you love to drive, like on Sunday mornings on your back, favorite back road, this is the car you're not buying this car to impress anybody.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Because nobody knows. Nobody has any idea what this thing is. Right. On the road, it's just it's a weird looking orange BMW. No one would ever know that you're driving, one of the most special cars I think ever built. That's such a great point that this is not a poser's car. This is a car for drivers. A Porsche is also a driver's car, but everybody knows what it is. This thing, you have the same fun, but nobody knows. You can't buy one of these thinking you're going to drive down South Beach and people look at you, whatever. You'll never have. You have to be committed to loving the driving experience of this car, because you will never get the attention that you might be seeking. Because you get to have all the fun of any like exotic or Porsche or whatever, and the only people who will come up to you at the gas station are that like one person who's like, what am? Holy crap! And that's the guy you want to be talked to, you know? Now, we got to talk about hydraulic steering. The owner of this car also has an M2, which has electric steering. Right. And this car still has old school hydraulic steering, which a lot of people say is better. It feels great. It feels so nice to steer this car. The steering is very well weighted. The steering rack is very quick. You know, you make a quick movement and the car changes direction instantly. I noticed that in a lot of very modern exotic cars, but not so much in $50,000 5-row. I mean, that's crazy. It really, really turns. Rev matching is so easy. For some reason, there are a few cars I get in where you can just tell instantly how much throttle you have to give it to drop down the gear, exactly when you have to do it. And this is one of those cars. I've been driving this car, 6 minutes? And that was like the perfect rev match already. And I'm not that great at that, but this car makes it very, very easy. Because that's the thing. Rich people who just buy cool BMWs get the newest, the best, the most powerful, the biggest. You got to really know your stuff to want, one of these. Right. But there's a reason the values have been preserved. There are enough people who really know their stuff.
Yeah, and let's say it's worth 60 grand today, right? Give or take.
Yeah.
I think it's undervalued, right? Because there's 4,000 E30 M3s. There's 25,000 E46 M3s. There's 25,000 E90 series M3s. You only have 740 of these.
Yeah,
and anybody who does the comparisons always picks this car over those cars.
The steering is so nice and heavy. We go around that sharper turn and the steering just you feel it. You really feel it.
Right.
That is how it should be. Oh, wow, there's a lot of mid-range power, actually. Oh, I need one of these. I so deeply need one of these. I've wanted one of these cars for years now. It feels so good on these roads. It is incredibly well balanced. There's very little body roll, just really well controlled because this car is the right size. Everybody's like, oh, M5 has 600 horsepower. Yeah, well, the M5 is the size of a boat. Like, this car doesn't need 500 horsepower. It's the perfect size. That's what people don't get. Probably because nobody else drives in back roads. They like to floor it at a stoplight and go, yeah, this is great. Like, this is where the fun is, and this car is just perfect. The balance and the poise is just amazing. In the end, everyone everyone's opinions are different. Most people like larger cars, more technology, more power, bigger interiors, and BMW is happy to oblige with more gadgety, more powerful, bigger M3s and M5s every few years. Me, I like smaller, tossable cars. You can't just put your foot down and enjoy in a straight line. I like cars you have to get into the curves and work a little bit more for the power, and the 1M is the king of that world. I wish BMW made more cars like this. I wish everyone made more cars like this. This car is the all-time greatest BMW ever made, and it remains one of the single greatest cars I've ever driven. But I chose the 1M because I love it so much and because it's such a unique something or other. Me, I like smaller, tossable, analog cars you can't just put your foot down and enjoy in a straight line.